Hello, thank you all. My name is Lisa Stark. I'm thrilled to be here and to have this fabulous panel. This is going to be the highlight of the day, I just want you to know, so thank you for staying this late. You know, when I was asked to do this panel, I was thinking a lot about my own education, which was half a century ago, let's just say. And I was thinking about sort of the career opportunities that were offered at that time. And believe it or not, it was home ec for the girls and shop for the boys. And that was about it. So we have come a long way, but as this panel is going to let us know, there's still a ways to go and a way to take and build your own talent for companies and to make sure people get hooked up to the company that you want and that it's right for the worker as well. So everyone here on the panel is going to introduce themselves very briefly, and then we're going to get on to the discussion. And Philip, I'm going to start with you. Philip Hardin is the CEO and founder of U Science.
Yes. And so, thank you, Lisa, and good afternoon, everyone. And so hopefully we can help kids cut through that gender social noise and diversify and increase our talent pipeline. But what U Science does is quite simply help local communities build a talent pipeline and a workforce more effectively. And we do it by engaging three constituents. First, we start with the student. We give them aptitude-based career guidance. So instead of just asking a young person, hey, would you rather do QA in a manufacturing environment or inventory in a retail store, when they've done none of these, we actually have them play these 5 to 8 minute game-like exercises to measure natural abilities so that we can give them affirmative feedback, help them understand that they have talent, expand their vision of opportunity. Second, we give tools to the educators so that they can use these tools to get kids into the right CTE program, technical college, community college, and other post-secondary programs more effectively based on what these kids naturally do well and what they like to do. And finally, because we've actually measured natural abilities or aptitudes, we can help employers and chambers quantify their local talent pool so that they can actually engage with the schools more effectively and actually reach down into the student population so that they can more effectively get these kids into work study, apprenticeship, internship programs, and other developmental programs.
Great. Well, we'll ask you more about that in a little bit, but first we're going to go over to Christy Gragnani Woods, and she's the Senior Vice President for Talent Acquisition at Bank of America.
So it's nice to see everybody here today. I get the privilege of helping to lead the talent acquisition efforts for Bank of America. And also probably one of my favorite parts of the job is to be heavily engaged in workforce development activities that really help us reach to the community and help with those non-traditional type talent that we need to be able to fill all the jobs that we have at Bank of America. We also have a huge initiative going on right now about training and development. So as we talk about that non-traditional talent, as we talk about people's quest to find careers and not jobs, we'll talk a little bit about how we're trying to make a difference in that space.
Okay, we'll get into that as well. And finally, Philip Hardin. No, that was you, sorry. Chris, Philip, you were so interested, I'm gonna have you say it all over again. We're gonna go to Chris Winton, he's Vice President of Human Resources at FedEx. Chris?
Yes, so glad to be here. At FedEx, we believe that if you put people first, they'll deliver an awesome service that makes us profitable, and then we reinvest that profit right back into the people. And so why I'm excited to be here today is really talk about how do we connect people with possibilities. And in our business, that's not just packages. We believe that for individuals in the community as well.
And you know, I'm going to ask Chris to tell a little bit about his story because in a sense it illustrates the kind of programs and things that we're talking about as far as building your own talent. So if you could just give us a thumbnail on how you got to where you are, that would be great.
So I grew up Memphis, Tennessee, underserved community. I kind of consider myself starting out in that non-traditional bucket. I grew up with two baby boomer parents, blue collar. And I heard, go to school, make good grades, so you can get a good job with good, yeah, okay, all right. We got some baby boomer parents that raised the same way, but yeah, with good benefits, and that was the American dream. Well, that dream wasn't exactly the way it worked out for me because I was a C student in school. And back then, you know, you were evaluated based on the grades. So A students over here, C students to the side. Good luck to you. So I worked throughout high school and had a work permit my senior year. So as I was leaving school early, the guidance counselor stopped me in the hallway and said, "Hey, Chris, I know you're headed to work, but before you leave, I want you to sit in on this presentation." And so I went into the presentation, and it was an organization by the name of Inroads, whose mission was to develop and place talented minorities and grow them into corporate leadership. So as soon as I walk in, they put up that first slide of minimum requirements, 3.0 GPA. So I stood up, walked out, and said, okay, well, not for me. I needed to be at work anyway. So the individual from Inroads came outside, stopped me in the hallway, and said, hey, I want to hear your story. And that was the first time in my school years that someone actually asked to hear my story. And so when they found out that I was actually working at night to help pay bills at home, because we didn't want our mom to work 2 jobs anymore, my brother and I made that decision. So Inroads accepted me into the program, and I was sponsored through a company by the name of FedEx. So FedEx sponsored me through Inroads, and through FedEx, I was able to get an internship in IT, spent 17 years moving up the ranks within IT, and now VP of HR, driving talent acquisition.
Great story. So what struck me about your story is sort of the happenstance of it. You were leaving, your guidance counselor kind of saw you, he told you to go in, you then left that meeting, this guy came out. There were a lot of things that, if they hadn't lined up exactly that way, you would not be where you are today.
I would be in the grocery business, because that's where I worked, and that was the plan. I was going to grow within the grocery business. But I do think it's important, and I think where we talk about connecting people and possibilities, it took that guidance counselor working with that nonprofit and the private sector reaching in and connecting there to create that purposeful pathway.
And I'm wondering, though, for anyone of the panel wants to answer, I mean, so here's a situation where, how do you make it so it's not happenstance? How do you make it so that the kids who are out there who are talented can be matched up with the employers who are obviously looking and desperate in some cases for these talented students and these talented workers?
So I think you have to be very intentional. And so the one thing that I would say about how proud I am of the efforts that we're doing at Bank of America is that we are committed to making people's financial lives better. And part of that, when we think about our communities, is that we have to meet people where they are. And so we have to be very focused and intentional about meeting with our nonprofit partners and explaining exactly what we're looking for so that they can help refer talent to us, so that the pull through of getting them jobs and them finding a lasting career is there. We have to be intentional about how we go into a market and explain what we do and all the different jobs that we have to offer. We have to be intentional at every single age, and we have to be intentional in the strategies for sourcing. And so I think we've always been very creative about how to go to market, but we're having to get more and more creative. And then I think there's some really basic things, and we were talking as colleagues before the session around things as simple as job descriptions. Like, if as corporations we can not use acronyms, we can be really deliberate about what the required skill sets are for the jobs, then when people come to your website or they come to talk to people at your organization, they know what it takes to get certain jobs within your organization. So I think a lot of this is about being intentional and also making sure that you answer questions and you invest the time up front. And that may take more hand-holding, and that may not just be someone posting for a job and going through an automated system. It may take a lot more conversations than that, and I think it's important.
And let me just say one thing, and then I'm going to let you talk, Phil. And when you talk about those job descriptions, we had talked about the fact that you have to write them so people understand what you're asking for, right? You don't want to put them in the kind of jargon where someone's going to look at it and think, oh, that's not for me, that's not for me. And that's one thing that Bank of America has done, correct? Rewritten some of their job descriptions.
We've revamped a ton of our job descriptions because you have to not only tell people exactly what's required in the job, but we also have to tell people, how is that job going to feel? What am I going to learn from that job? What are the desired skills that I may need for that job? So you'll notice when you go onto the website that the majority of our jobs now are written in a very conversational language so that people can understand what they're looking at, what that job will feel like, and to make sure that it's something that they'd like to do.
And I'm sorry, are you going to add something about trying to make this work not so happenstance in a way, but in a more
what I would
purposeful way?
like to do is pull some of Chris's story a little further up in the talent pipeline. Because when we've looked across several 100,000 students across the US, the one observation that just jumps off the page is that even though there is a skills gap, there's not a talent gap. The kids in our schools, your schools, have the talent to do the work that we need them to do. We've just got to do a better job of uncovering that talent and directing them to high-wage, high-demand careers. And so one of the things that came out of Chris's story is, think about it, we use a GPA, an ACT, SAT as an academic talent measure, yet it measures a really narrow range of talent. If you're high math, high vocabulary, touchdown, you're a winner. You're on stage. But if you're, one of the key things about this is how do you measure a broader set of talent and help uncover all those talents so that you can then direct them, in ways that they're available and they're getting those broad set of credentials that everyone's been talking about throughout today.
So the idea obviously is to let people know that they might have more skills than they even think they do. And I think you said in the study that you were talking about and the research you've done is it doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your ethnicity, your income status, everyone has a really deep well of talent, although people don't divide themselves that way.
Right. Well, one of the things to just observe, talent is much more equally distributed than opportunity. And to help these young people, one, if you're trying to go up to a young woman and ask them, say, hey, would you like to go into advanced manufacturing? Would you like to go into IT or maybe construction? You get a really like, are you kidding me kind of response, where when they may pick nursing or social work and all that. But when you look at the aptitudes or natural abilities of these young women and these young men, they're perfectly equal. And so how do we help build the self-efficacy of these young women? These poor kids, minority kids, urban kids, rural kids, but any of these kids with a narrow vision of opportunity so that then they'll be energized and pursue these credentials and stay in education and be available in the marketplace for the B of A's, for the FedExes.
So what are companies doing wrong now, I guess? How do they need to change the way that they're looking at talent? How do they need to change the way that they're hiring people?
Well, I definitely think that there's an opportunity to just totally flip the model on its head. So I was at an event, Tech Hire. This was a couple of years ago. It was launched out of Baltimore. They had a bunch of groups through First Robotics, inner city schools with their robots. And I happened, like I said, to walk up on a conversation, and it was two kids, one African-American, one Hispanic, and they were talking about their robot, and their robot was throwing a ball 7 feet into a basket. And one of them said, I keep missing it. Mine is going 9 feet. And he said, I can't figure it out. And the other kid goes, he said, well, pull up your code. I had this problem last week, and I think I figured it out. So they was editing the code, and the language went something like, yeah, your flux capacitor is off, or I couldn't even understand what they were saying. But they fixed the code right there. And I just asked, I said, how old are you? Well, they were both 14 years old. I said, the model is shifted. They had talent right there that we could use. And so now it's how do you partner them with the right organizations to give them the soft skills, the interpersonal skills, where they're workforce ready. And then companies such as us start to go, all right, I will pay for you to go to college while you work, and let's tackle the student loan debt along with that. So it's changing the traditional model, and so one of the things we did was remove the degree requirement for those jobs, and let's hire them in.
And why did you feel it was necessary to do that? Because they weren't really required to have degrees, really, or?
Well, there is a traditional belief that the IT jobs all require degrees. And so my background is IT, but I graduated almost 20 years ago. So if you think about the technology 20 years ago, there were no cell phones. I think we were walking around with pagers on. I mean, and computers in homes was just starting to become normal.
Right.
Well, this generation has grown up with this technology, so it's more natural to them. So do I wait for LeBron James to graduate college before I hire him? No, how about we hire him if once he comes out of high school and pay for him to go to college?
I do think I do think it's I'll go back to my conversation about being intentional. I think that as we're looking at talent and we're investing in nonprofit organizations, making sure that we understand what do they need from us on training, what do they need from us on education to make sure that we can meet all the participants that they have to share with us from a workforce standpoint early on. I also think too that we have to focus on the generations that are looking for work now really want purpose. There's a purpose-driven economy, and we also need to make sure that we're highlighting all the services and opportunities they can have within our companies, that they can find purpose in a long-driven career within a corporation. They can have an opportunity to volunteer. They can have an opportunity to get connected to things that are really meaningful in their lives so that they're not just living to work, but they're working to live and have an experience around that. And so I do think that those pieces are as important as training and development. And we have taken a really hard look at how we train individuals within the consumer and small business organization at Bank of America. So now we've taken a concept called the Academy, where we bring individuals into formal training. So part of that may be that they have a new hire onboarding coach that's in the field. They've got on-the-job training, they've got some classroom training, and they've got some electronic digital training. But it's not all sit in front of the computer and not have interface and have someone supporting them. And I think when you start looking at different sources of talent, all of those different ways that you experience learning have to be touched with employees so that you don't miss an opportunity to reach somebody. Because those training programs that we have now are showing an amazing amount, thousands of people that are showing career advancement and career progression across the board. And that's what people want to hear. They don't want to hear that they're going into one job. They want to hear that they're going into a career. And now what can you show them about how they can find purpose and how they can find all that opportunity within your walls?
Were you going to add something?
Probably the only thing to add there is there's a great opportunity for employers to more intentionally engage with community colleges, high schools, and the educational system in their communities to build that talent pipeline rather than wait post-credential and say, that's what I'm going to get. Whatever education produces, that's the beginning of my talent pipeline. I think there's an opportunity now to efficiently go forward so that you're actually increasing the number of students, increasing the diversity of students, pursuing those credentials so it's not just a random act of education, but it's really an intentional talent pipeline, starting earlier in the educational system and then post-credential.
Oh, go ahead.
Just one thing to add, because I think we've all touched on it. And then big corporations offer tuition reimbursement. So we can help bring down the debt in this country from tuition by getting people jobs and helping them pay for that tuition reimbursement as they go along, whatever academic advancement they want to have. So I do think that we need to continue to do a good job of highlighting the tuition reimbursement for a lot of the individuals that we're starting to meet through our nonprofit partners. We're trying to do a better job of saying we have backup childcare. You don't have to worry if someone gets sick at home. You can still be at work, and we're going to help you make that happen. So I think those pieces, like you're saying, we need to get ahead of that and help people understand how we can bring upon more economic mobility by not allowing them to have to take on that debt.
Can small companies do that too? I mean, you are both representing very large, companies, obviously. I'm wondering what advice you would have for a smaller company that can't find the skills or the talent they need or wants to try to build local talent.
So my parents, we came from a long-standing family business, and so I think there's a lot of different ways that family-owned businesses and small businesses can help in the communities. It can be helping with one class at a time. It can help with return-to-work programs. Those were all things that I saw my family commit to, which is why we were so involved in the nonprofit sector. But I do think that no matter what size your company, there's little differences you can make for people that help with their economic status.
I definitely would add, I think your small companies get to benefit from the investment of the larger corporations. So for us, we really started working together our corporate social responsibility along with HR, saying how do we increase the pipeline coming out of the community? And it's, all right, let's take grant dollars through our FedEx Cares program and create an employment pathways giving strategy. So we're going to identify those nonprofits that are in the communities, and it's not just for our own self-interest, although we will hire out of them, but it's really building the talent in that community so we all thrive. So that's been a wonderful partnership for us.
Well, and I think we're sitting here at the U.S. Chamber, okay? The role of these local chambers, that's one of the best things they do, is they lower the cost, they lower the friction for any size employer to get engaged, okay? And so, for example, on Friday, this last Friday, we did an awesome program working with the Nashville Chamber of Commerce, and you were talking about how early to get engaged. They've made, the community in Nashville's made a big investment in academy program working with Metro Nashville Public Schools. The issue is these kids are going to these academies and they're not going at larger numbers into those different careers. They're not continuing on their skills investment. And so it was sort of a random act of education still. And so they brought us in, and what we did is just add some intentionality, add the data to a career fair so that these kids could walk around knowing what their aptitudes are, interests. We color-coded, but we had hundreds of employers at this career fair so that these kids could make a more intentional decision in the 9th grade about what academy to go to. And it was not just the Tennessee Valley Authority or Nissan or other large, or St. Joe's, other large local employers. It's employers of any size helping get these kids interested in their industry, but it was facilitated by the chamber. So, right.
But I want to ask you about something, because you said 9th graders. I think you and I have talked a little bit about, is that even too late to start getting these kids? If you want to sort of put kids on a pathway, when do you need to start doing that as a business, thinking about business and working with educators and working with schools?
One of the things that the chambers and business leaders and state leaders have asked us to do is focus middle school on up, because sure, you want to get these kids, people talk about prenatal career guidance, that's interesting, but their real first decision about, when they start to narrow their choice, where these, where they're taking themselves out of contention for the IT, for the advanced manufacturing, for the healthcare position, or whatever it may be, is really coming middle school into high school. Right. And so being intentional in the middle school, and then carrying that on through, on into college, or even returning adults. So it's never too late, but we at least want to capture them in those middle schools before they make those first narrowing decisions.
And I'm wondering, Chrissy and Chris, both of you have talked about nonprofits. So how important is that, sector, I guess, to make this all work? I mean, I assume you wouldn't be able to do it necessarily on your own in such an easy fashion, but if you could talk a little bit about how you partner with the nonprofits and make that work.
So I think it's a business imperative, but it's also a social responsibility. I think that we have always partnered in a really meaningful way with nonprofits. I just think we can do more and better, because it's an incredible amount of talent that comes from some of these nonprofit organizations. I mean, we have great partnerships with Year Up that you've heard a little bit about today, and UNIDOS, and Boys and Girls Club, and the YWCA. And you think about all the different programming that these organizations have, Urban League, Urban Alliance, that if they have these strong programs within the nonprofits, and then you can balance that with strong programs inside your company, then they have a wrapper of support that just allows them to begin with an organization that they feel means something special to them, that supports them, that cares about their growth, all the way through a meaningful career. So I don't think that we could emulate the communities in which we serve if we didn't hire from and work really closely with our nonprofits.
I definitely echo that. I'm thinking through a story when we really started to get deep into the space and say, wait a minute, we can actually fill jobs through these pipelines. So it's not just wanting to do something good in the community anymore. This is where I say 1 + 1 = 3. I get to do something good in the community and invest there. They also then hire on and fill the job, and then they produce a return for us, and so we get to reinvest. But there was one program that sticks out, and it was really kind of our marquee, but it's a nonprofit called Base Camp Coding Academy. It's in Water Valley, Mississippi. And if you're wondering where Water Valley, Mississippi is, so was I. But they had a phenomenal program, and it was a local IT company that just wanted to make a difference. So they went into schools and sought out the kids who were the C, D students. They said, give us the kid that came from a different background, who you don't feel is on a college trajectory. And so they would bring them in and for 1 full year, teach them how to code, but also give them those soft skills and interpersonal skills. And then they put their work online. So companies like FedEx could go see their code, see how they write. And so I sent that out to our IT leaders, but I never told them where they were coming from. So they just saw the work and said, I need this guy or this girl, give me this talent. So we brought in the talent, and that's when they said, wait a minute, are these kids are younger than my kids. So what you saw was a group of 19-year-olds who had a year of experience, could code, and were ready for the workforce. But then all of the other wraparound services became important because they were just entering into the workforce, so they didn't have the clothes. And you start to think about those little things, but that's when we say, well, because we partner with an organization called Dress for Success, all right, let's connect you with Dress for Success, because we know you'll feel confident if you're dressed appropriately when you walk in. And then there are those intangible skills, the inner office skills. So we had another organization that we were working with and funding called the Gifted Foundation, who came in and taught the intangible skills. So now we have about 20 of those individuals who are developers for FedEx, and they're kicking butt and taking names.
Well, I mean, what's interesting to me is how much of a wraparound service you have to provide if you're going to try to do this. I mean, you can't just say, oh, we want to recruit from, disadvantaged populations, let's find good kids and just throw them in the workforce, because that is just not going to work, it sounds like. I mean, you really have to provide them with a whole set of skills that they have not necessarily had.
Well, the amazing part is, and this is why the nonprofits are important, there are amazing organizations all throughout the country that are doing amazing work in their lane. And I think what we're trying to do is help the organizations partner together and create this intentional pathway, and just because then they each become vital links in that chain of success for that individual.
And then all you do is you continue to increase the pull-through of the hires.
Exactly.
And so the more we can increase the pull-through of hires, and then we see the retention of those individuals, then the more and more we have meaningful individuals who have a loyalty to that company as well.
And others will follow in their stead, obviously.
We hope so.
Yeah.
Exactly. Then we send them back to the community to tell others.
That's right.
And they pull through.
And how do you let the potential students or kids out there know about these intentional pathways? I mean, how can people find out about it? What does the company do to do outreach to make sure you're actually reaching the people that you want to reach? Or how does your company hook people up, or your business hook people up with these companies, so that kids can look and say, oh, wait, there is a way forward for me?
And that's where it is hard for an individual company to go, hey, I'd like to work with middle schools. I'd like to work all the way forward in that education. And so that's part of the role when you, I love your analogy of the lane and the number of people, but our, folks like us that can actually uncover those talents early. So find the young women, the minorities that can program, that show the natural ability for that, so that we can then give educators the ability to get them into the right CTE pathway, get them into that dual degree pathway, start giving them that self-efficacy so they can find the girls that code, and we can bring those in. So there's a way that you can intentionally uncover that talent early, start to create that talent pipeline, have them take advantage of the publicly paid education available to them before it's too late. And that way, once you get them identified, then the employers can get them into the work-study programs, get them into the internships and apprenticeships in a more intentional, higher ROI, because the employers are looking going, we know this kid's got the talent to do this job. And that way we can just lower the cost for employers to engage.
I mean, we try to have a very local community feel too. So I think that when you are trying to get the word out that you have all of these jobs, I mean, the majority of the jobs that we have don't require degrees, and they haven't required degrees. That's not something that we changed. So we want to make sure that we're out there in the communities, making sure that people understand that Bank of America is a great place to work, and that as we work through those community relationships, our partnership relationships, the small businesses that we invest in, we're hoping that that market and community feel is what also gets the word out about what we can do for the people that live in those communities, because that's what it's all about, finding jobs for the people that live in the communities and where we want to create more economic mobility. So I do think there's a community market feel to that that's been very powerful for us.
Well, I know you have an ambitious goal that we talked about of hiring 10,000 folks from underserved communities over the next 5 years, or a 5-year goal, right? And so how do you go about doing that? Is it through the nonprofits you're working with? How do you build that talent from scratch, as the name of our panel is?
So we've made 3 commitments to our community. So over the next 5 years, we committed to hiring 10,000 people from low to moderate income communities. We made a commitment to get 1,000 referrals from our nonprofit partners, and to make sure that at the end of 2 years, we could say we have 10 partnerships that we feel like we have playbooks for, that we can leverage to be able to scale and be able to share that wealth with all sorts of nonprofits and local regional partners that could help. So in doing that, we have to make sure that we've invested time up front with all of the partnerships, both in the local communities, regional and national, and that takes a lot of time. And we have invested resources and marketing and advertising, but just hardcore time into making sure that not only we're spending time with the nonprofit partners to reach those 3 goals, but we're spending a lot of time with the participants that they're referring to us, because not everybody knows what they want to do. They don't know all the jobs that are afforded to them, and they need to get more information to make sure that they're making the right decision. Because to us, it may be just post for a job. Any of these jobs could be great. To someone who hasn't had $15.30 an hour wage, to someone who's thinking about having an apartment for the very first time, making that commitment to that first job is really, really important. So it can't be something that you think can happen very quickly. We want to really make sure that we've invested that time. So that time is with the partnerships, and it's with the people and the participants coming through.
There also is a way to connect. So the nonprofits, I think, give us the feet on the street to meet people where they are. There's also a technology opportunity there. So we've been working with Google for probably the past 3 years on their Jobs API. And essentially what it does is it'll take your search patterns. So if you have an individual who is in construction, but often searches for IT things, then now jobs start to come to you the same way as marketing is done today. And so now when you start to see those opportunities show up to you, and you click and say you're interested, then companies like FedEx now reach out to you to talk about those jobs. So that way we can also connect to larger populations if we can't meet them on the street.
It's the same technology, and the reason I buy so much from Amazon,
That
because
is
it
the
just
reason,
serves
'cause
up everything I
keeps
need to
coming
get
to you.
based on all of my, there you go.
Little plugs there, it's okay. You mentioned career and technical education. It used to be called vocational ed, now it's CTE. There's still sort of this sense that it's not really set up the way it needs to be set up, and that it doesn't necessarily work. It is not geared towards the jobs that are out there necessarily. So what do companies need to do, and what do educators need to do to make sure that there is a better fit between the two?
One, I think it's evolving and evolving rapidly. So it sort of fell out of favor, but it's not mutually exclusive. This notion of, okay, there's your college-bound kid, and there is your CTE kid. In the spring, my son actually is the Tennessee State champion for business law and ethics through DECA, which is a CTE program. Right. Okay, the kid's probably going to go on to a 4-year college. So I think schools are doing a very good job of changing the dialogue. Second is, this is where an opportunity for employers really exists. If you're running large-scale manufacturing, healthcare, and all that, there's an opportunity to really intentionally engage with the school system to improve the quality of the programming. So you're not just relying on just that one person that they got, but being engaged and bringing in people that can bring relevance of here's what's really happening in the marketplace. And it's not just dollar investment. It's people coming by, them getting exposed to seeing somebody that looks like them in that particular role. A female going by and talking to the computer programming, inviting them in to take that kind of CTE. So there's a lot that employers can do, and there's a lot that more data available to see the talent pipeline so that you know the dual degree programs and the CTE programs that are available. But they've advanced a lot in the last handful of years, and I would expect them to continue to advance substantially.
Were you going to add something to that, Christy? Or?
I was just thinking, we talk so much about the attraction piece and the building the talent from scratch, but I don't want to ever forget how important it is that once they're in your company, they have to be able to see the ability to progress, and they have to see the ability to advance. And to some that may mean advancing and becoming managers and having even larger positions. To others that may mean specialist positions. So I do believe that we can't take our eyes off of the training programs, and that's one reason we've invested so much in the training, because we want people to feel that they have a progression. They can actually see when they come in first entry-level roles, here are all the different roles you can get to, and here's the time frame that you can get to those. So it seems very reachable. It seems that I can stay in this job for 12 to 18 months, and now I can already see the next job I can reach, and the next, and the next. So I think part of building talent from scratch also has to be, once I've built that talent and you've seen your first few jobs, now what does that mean to me so that I don't feel the need to leave your company, and that I can see how I can grow a long-standing career. So building it is ongoing. It doesn't stop once they've gotten into the door and had that first year or 2 years with you.
It's an ongoing, not a static process.
It's
Yeah,
not
go ahead.
static.
Were you going to say something? It's interesting because we talked a little bit about this beforehand too. There's this whole, philosophical debate. Do you train kids in a skill, or do you train them to be thinkers? Is education for education's sake still a good thing? And I don't know, from where all you sit and the people that you're trying to hire, what do you think about that? Because the job that you're hiring someone for may not exist in 5 years, right? So you're going to train them for this specific job, but how are they going to be able to adapt as our workforce is adapting, our workplace?
I say it goes back to, and this is actually nothing new, but it goes back to what we used to classify as the it factor. And you knew it was the it factor because when you met that person, you said, they got it. I always say, I met a kid at Chick-fil-A and I said, I want to hire this kid. Just because that personality, greet me as soon as I came in, the service was great. But then you start to zoom out and go, well, what is it that Chick-fil-A is doing? Because all of my experiences are that way. So that's where the training programs and being very intentional about how we do it. But it is back to that it factor of that curious mindset, passionate about the work that we're doing, and then now how do we pull that individual in and point that curiosity to solving a human need? And when we can do that, now you're hiring great talent.
Do you feel that businesses, and you obviously feel that businesses need to get much more involved in the education system at an early stage?
Well, and that's where they're either going to suffer from a random act of talent, whatever the education system gives you in terms of number of credentialed folks, or you're going to figure out how to create an intentional talent pipeline within your local community. And if you're running a large, we heard from Kentucky, manufacturing, somebody's going to have to come to your plant. You have a distribution center, you have a large healthcare center. They have to develop that talent. And
You mean
the companies working with the schools. So they don't have to provide the education, schools do it. But there's an opportunity for the companies to collaborate now. And schools are more open than they've ever been to that type of collaboration. So that there's an intentional talent pipeline before credential so that then companies can communicate more effectively what they need, but they can also help these kids unearth their talent. And I think, by the way, this notion of skills versus thinking, it's really one of relevance. Okay. You've got to help these young people understand, why are you, those kids that were coding, I love that. But that's about creating relevance in your education. Even though you want them to have sort of a liberal arts mindset, getting them to see the practical reality of what they're doing and the benefits, it's both. It's not an either or, it's a both.
I mean, it's interesting. Years ago, when my daughter was looking at colleges, one of the schools we looked at, I was very impressed. They had these sheets, and it had if you are X major, these are the 40 jobs you can do. If you're a philosophy major, if you're a math major, and I just thought to me, it was very energizing because you don't think that way. I think a lot of schools don't think that way, particularly, maybe a liberal arts college doesn't think that way. But I think it's really important, for the kids trying to figure out what they want to do with their life to see what all these possibilities are with whatever degree or whatever credential they're going to get. I know the last person talked a little bit about apprenticeships and internships, and I'm wondering how this all fits in your view on trying to grow your own talent and where companies need to be in that regard.
We are heavily committed to apprenticeships, internships, bringing people into internships or being able to hire some out of programs directly into positions. I think that gives people an amazing opportunity to see the job for all that it has to offer and to decide that may be the perfect job for them. They may want to try something different. And so I think when we talk about training people for the next jobs, I think the one thing that I always like to remind our interns of, or some of the individuals that we bring on for apprenticeships, is if you don't feel like you made the best decision, we have a ton of different jobs. And you can look at all of these jobs. You don't have to feel like that you're gonna make the wrong decision because there's just so many different opportunities that are afforded for you. So you can absolutely take advantage of all the opportunities in front of you. So sometimes I think some of the interns that we have feel like they just have to decide and that this is gonna be the decision for the rest of their life. And we have a little flexibility and you have ways to be able to adjust to maximize all the different opportunities that are within small companies and large companies.
Yeah, heavily invested in the intern program. We probably bring in just over 200 every summer. I started as an intern, and when I started X number of years ago, it was go in the corner, file these papers, and when you come back, count the paper clips. It was that type of, back in the day. So we totally revamped our approach. We bring them in as teams. And so it's teams of 4 to 5, and we give them a real business problem. And so in the interview process, we're asking, well, what job do you think you want to do? So if you want to be a coder, business analyst, marketing, project manager, and so we'll put a team together of a developer, a systems tester, project manager, and we give them a real business problem. And then in 5 weeks, they present their solution to the business problem to a board of directors who are actually making hiring decisions. Well, the first year we did it, we just wanted to see how they work together. We had no idea that they would actually solve the problem. And so we started to realize that, wait a minute, they can solve problems in 5 weeks that we've hired vendors to try and solve in 6-8 months. And so it became kind of the standard approach. And then now I actually have hiring managers fighting to get on those panels because they know they get first pick at the talent. So the team-based approach has really been one that's thriving.
That sounds like a fabulous approach.
About that too is that the students will hear that and then they will want to go to the companies that have the meaningful roles. And so I think the more you can invest in what that experience is going to be for the intern, it's not only great for your business, but it's also great for those students to be able to go back and talk about those opportunities on campus.
And then after that first 5 weeks, if they want to change and do a different role, okay, it's a new project, try a different role in this project, and let's see what you do.
That sounds fabulous. Where do I sign up? Does anyone have any last thoughts that, because we've run out of time unfortunately, but I didn't know if anyone wanted to leave anybody with last thoughts about how to raise up talent and build talent for your own companies?
I think the one thing that we have continued to discuss at Bank of America is that as we're trying to build talent for the future, as we're trying to make sure that we're partnering with different organizations, just continue to try different things. Be creative, be courageous, look at what's working, rethink what may not be working, but continue to try different things. We've got to just be courageous to try all sorts of different things to create new talent and go into new and different pipelines, and then create that engagement and advocacy with all the leaders at the company that will make those hiring decisions.
For us, it was, let's shift how we look at talent. Recently, I just bumped into a recent hire of ours who had a career in construction and lost his job, when the economy took a dip, and he had just started a family, and he just started playing with technology at night. And so through one of the nonprofits got hired full time, but I know that there was a time when we would not have done that. So continuing to shift how we see talent, and now bring them in and, like to your point, coach them forward. Mm-hmm.
I think this is a perfect role for chambers of commerce because they operate at the intersection of education and employers, and their ability to actually collaborate with both allows them to really effectively create that talent process and that lower the friction and lower the cost of engagement for small to mid-sized employers and everyone to engage in that talent pipeline.
All right, thank you all very much. Very informative. Thank you.